Okay. At the beginning of the 5th century AD, Saint Jerome was able to produce a text in Latin using Hebrew documents. It was later to be called the Vulgate on account of its universal distribution after the 7th century AD. This is a lot of information, mashallah. Okay, at the beginning of the 5th century AD, Saint Jerome was. Wait a minute, I just read that. Okay, sorry. For the record, we shall mention that the Aramaic version of the Syriac, the Peshitta version, but these are incomplete. Okay. All of these versions have been enabled specialists to piece together so-called middle-of-the-road texts, a sort of compromise between the different versions. Multilingual collections have also been produced, which just pose the Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Syriac, Aramaic, and even Arabic versions. This is the case of the famous Walton Bible in London 1657. For the sake of completeness, let us mention that diverging biblical conceptions are responsible for the fact that the various Christian churches do not all accept the exact same books, and have not until now had identical ideas on translation in the same language. The ecumenical translation of the Old Testament is a work of unification written by numerous Catholic and Protestant experts, now nearing completion, and should result in a work of synthesis. Thus, the human element of the Old Testament is seen to be quite considerable. It is not difficult to understand why versions to version and translation to translation, with all the corrections inevitably resulting, it was possible for the original text to have been transformed during the course of more than 2,000 years. All right. Now we're going to talk about origins of the Bible. Before it became a collection of books, it was a folk tradition that relied entirely upon human memory. Originally, the only means of passing on ideas, this tradition was sung. And so basically, this talks about the songs, the Song of Songs, Numbers, Judges. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Obviously, I can't read everything in this book, but all right. Let's see. Okay, there is a good reason to believe that after the Jewish people settled in Canaan, at the end of the 13th century BC, writing was used to preserve and hand down the tradition. Let's see. There was not, however, complete accuracy, and even in what to men seems to be a demand of the greatest durability, the laws. Among these, the laws, which were supposed to have been written by God's own hand, the Ten Commandments, were transmitted into the Old Testament in two versions. Exodus 20, 1 through 21, and Deuteronomy 5, 1 through 30. Okay. They are the same in spirit, but the variations are obvious. Okay. There is also a concern to keep a large written record of contracts, letters, lists of personalities, etc. Okay. All right, let's see here. The Old Testament is a collection of works of greatly differing in length and many subjects. They were written in several languages over a period of more than 900 years based on oral traditions. The copious literature probably flowered at the beginning of the Israelite monarchy around the 11th century BC. It was at this period that a body of scribes appeared among the members of the royal household. They were cultivated men whose role was not limited to writing. The first incomplete writings mentioned in the preceding chapter may date from this period. It was not until later, possibly until the 10th century BC, that the so-called Yavist text of the Pentateuch was written. This text was to form the backbone of the first 5 books ascribed to Moses. Later, the so-called Elohist text was to be added. And also the so-called sacerdotal version. The initial Yavist text deals with the origins of the world up to the death of Jacob. This text comes from the southern kingdom of Judah. At the end of the 9th century and the middle of the 8th century BC, the prophetic influence of Elias and Elijah took shape and spread. We have their books today. This is also the time of the Elohist text of the Pentateuch, which covers a smaller period than the Yavist text because it limits itself to facts relating to Abraham, Jacob, and Joseph. The books of Joshua and Judges date from this time. Okay. The 8th century BC saw the appearance of the writer prophets Amos and Hosea in Israel and Micah in Judah. And 721 BC, the fall of Samaria put an end to the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Judah took over the religious heritage. Oh, okay. So, we see that Samaria was actually the Israelites, and then the kingdom of Judah took over. The collection of Proverbs dates from about this period. And let's see. The Torah was constituted and Deuteronomy was written about this time. In the second half of the 7th century BC, the reign of Josiah coincided with the appearance of the prophet Jeremiah, but his work did not take definitive shape until a century later. But before the first deportation to Babylonian in 598 BC, there appeared the books of Zephaniah, Nahum, and Habakkuk.